Okay, so the last video that we have is going to be on factoring by grouping. The reason that this is a lot easier is because you guys have already been factoring by grouping without knowing it. I think I've even said it, but I didn't tell you guys specifically. I didn't make a point of it. So we went over how to factor these problems here. Okay, x squared minus 2x minus 15. Okay, if you guys recall, we would say 1 times 15. So I've got factors of 15, and I need those factors to subtract to give me 2. So 1 and 15, 15 minus 1, no, that's 14. 3 and 5, 5 minus 3 gives me 2. So once we determined it was 3 and 5, we put our 3 and our 5 down here. Okay, and then we checked. Negative meant that these signs were different, and we needed them to be a negative 2. So if I had a negative 5 and a positive 3, okay, then that would give us the right answer there. We looked at our first two. We pulled out a common term for our first two. We looked at our second two. We pulled out a common term for our second two. Okay? The numbers that were out in front, those became one of our factors. The other factor, the one that was left over, became the second factor. Okay? And I will tell you guys right now, these 3 steps right here are factoring by grouping. Okay? So when you do a factoring by grouping problem, you're going to have 4 terms. You're going to look at the first 2 and factor something out. You're going to look at the second 2 and factor something out. What's left in the middle there is going to be one of your factors. The stuff out in front is another factor. Okay? The only thing is, when you do these problems, there is usually one trick that you have to watch out for at the end of it. Okay, and I will show you guys what that trick is. Okay, so next page. I've got x cubed minus x squared minus 16x plus 16. Okay, so we are going to solve this by factoring by grouping. So what can I pull out of my first 2 terms there? I've got an x cubed minus an x squared. Well, those both have an x squared. So if I pull out an x squared from both of those, I'd be left with just an x, and I'd be left with a minus 1. Okay. What can I pull out of the second 2 here? Hopefully you guys both see they have a 16, so yes, we can pull out a 16. The other thing is, remember, if there's ever a negative in front, like in this spot here, we don't just need to pull out a 16, we need to pull out a negative 16. And when I do that, that's going to leave me with an x on the inside. And since I pulled out a negative 16, that's going to leave me with a negative 1. I have to change that sign there. Okay? So this works out perfectly. The factors up in front, well, I've got an x squared minus 16. And then they both have an x minus 1. So my other factor is x minus 1. And that's it. Or is it? Because there's a trick. When you guys look at this, x minus 1, yeah, we're done with that. But what about x squared minus 16? That should look familiar because that is a difference of squares. Okay? Difference of squares hide in these all the time. So you always have to be watching out for difference of squares at the end of it. So this isn't done factoring. I need to go ahead and factor x squared minus 16, which from the first video we talked about, that should factor to an x plus 4 times an x minus 4, and then we still have our x minus 1. So when you guys factor, with grouping, typically you're going to have 3 factors by the end of it. Okay? All right, let's do one more. This one could be a little bit more difficult. I've got an x cubed, or 3x cubed plus a 4x squared. 3 and 4 don't have anything in common, but I could still pull out an x squared. Leaves me with a 3x plus 4. Okay? My second group here, remember if there's a negative here, we always want to pull out that negative. And then 12 and 16. 12 and 16 would have a 4 in common between them. And when I take out a 4 from 12, I'd be left with a 3 and an x. When I take out a 4 from a 16, I'd be left with a positive 4. Because remember, we pulled out that negative, so you've got to change the sign there. Okay? All right, so when I do that, I end up with the numbers out in front. X squared minus 4, 3x plus 4. And then we're done, right? No, because I've got an x squared minus 4, which is another difference of squares that they've hidden on us. Gosh, those guys are tricky. So there are our 3 factors. Okay? All right. Just one more page of notes here. Okay? I want you guys to try these on your own. Okay? So pause the video, give these a shot on your own. Okay? Hopefully you guys have tried these. X cubed and x squared, what can I pull out? I can pull out an x squared. When I do that, I'm left with an x plus 1. What can I pull out of these second ones? Negatives. So remember, pulling out a negative. And I can't really pull out anything, but we can always pull out a 1. So I'm pulling out a negative 1. Since I pulled out a negative, that's changing all those signs. So I get x squared minus 1 times x plus 1. Do I have a difference of squares on this one? Can you take a square root of 1? Well, the square root of 1 would just be 1, so yeah, we can. So I've got an x plus 1 times an x minus 1, and then I've still got my x plus 1 over here. Okay, if you guys wanted to on this one, you could rewrite your answer as an x plus 1 squared times an x minus 1. Either one of these answers would work for that. Either one would work. Okay, this last one also has kind of a little trick to it. Okay, what can I pull out of this here? Well, I can pull out an x squared, yeah. But I could also pull out a 9. Pull out a 9x squared. Okay, which when I do that leaves me with an x minus 1. Okay. What can I pull out of these two here? Well, they both have a 4. Oh, there's a negative there, so I'm pulling out a negative 4, which leaves me with an x minus 1. Again, that sign has to change when I pull out that negative there. Okay, so my two factors are 9x squared minus 4 times an x minus 1. Is that a difference of squares, 9x squared minus 4? Well, let's think about it. 9x squared, can I take the square root of 9x squared? Well, square root of 9 is 3. Square root of x squared is just an x. Okay, so yeah, it's 3x. And then can I take a square root of 4? Yeah, square root of 4 is 2. Okay, it works. So this is going to be a 3x plus 2 and a 3x minus 2 and then an x minus 1. There you go. Okay, and that's all our factoring by grouping is. Okay, there's a picture of Frank. If you guys have missed him, he's really been enjoying this quarantine break. That's our last lesson for you guys here. When you guys get done with your homework, send me a picture of your homework, and then I will send you guys your last quiz that you guys have. So good job. I know this quarantine hasn't been easy for anybody. Proud of you guys for making it through all these. I've been impressed.